This week, we're talking about Summerslam 2023, the deepest of breaths, and our Weekly Rad. And now your host, Mike and Deglio.
What's up, team? Welcome to K&M Geekly. Just a sneak peek. Two geeks talking about some of the things that get them through the week or getting them through this week. And I'm Mike and Deglio. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host and guy who just blew his nose off air, Keith Varney. Keith, how you doing?
You're welcome.
How are the sinuses?
Well, better now that I was able to share that with you over the 48K high definition audio coming from my very expensive vocal mic. You know, you're welcome. You're welcome, Mike. How you doing?
We're recording on a Sunday. CEO Jen has fled. She's going back to the Carolinas to take care of her mom, so I'm bacheloring once again. Keith, you and I had an experience last night we're going to talk about that I think 7, 8, 9-year-old us would have really, really appreciated. We each were in our respective caves, and snacking with multiple monitors, playing multiple sporting events and media, a text thread with just guys talking guy. It was something. It was really something. Jen walked home and she came in the room and just...
she sent me a picture.
She just was like, what is happening here? I was knee-deep in peanut M&Ms. But it was a fun night, man. It was one of those nights where, like, there were some big dreams in my life. Not all of those have come to fruition, but there are some smaller ones. Yet. But there's some smaller ones that are getting checked right off that list.
You know what? You're 100% right about that. It's like, because I feel exactly the same way. But when I sit here in the basement, which I have like built out to be exactly my 12-year-old fantasy room, I like literally have a fantasy room for 12-year-old me with all the action figures and toys and 700 televisions and a fancy piano and a computer. Life is good. Yeah. Life is good.
There's little to complain about. We will at least, well, there's plenty to complain about, but we will wear our privilege and our appreciation on our sleeves this morning.
Indeed.
There's a couple, and we're just going to do a couple of chats about some things. We'll talk our Weekly Rad, and we'll get you out to start your week. Keith, we're going to start with what we were watching last night in our caves. I think it's the best place to start, if you ask me, and that was the 2023 Summerslam. In Detroit, and that place was a rockin'. You know, it was only a few years ago that SummerSlam was in an empty arena, and there were no people, and now they were packed to the gills. That place was a rockin'. We had a pretty good card. For those of you who do not follow wrestling, the big kind of match, there was two big matches, right? We had your big Brock Lesnar versus Cody Rhodes, who is sort of the up-and-coming good guy in the company. He's sort of the man to really bring it back. He's like the up-and-coming Hulk Hogan, and he's having to earn his stripes. And then the other match was this storyline where the big champion, Roman Reigns, was facing his cousin in a tribal combat to see who's going to be head of the table in a story that is going on 3 years now. Yeah, going on maybe 3 years. So those are the big two things, and there was some other stuff. I think we've maybe talked about it on the show. I don't particularly watch the product on a week-to-week basis, but I like to get on the internet with my brother and some pals on these pay-per-views Saturdays and watch what's going on. And since it's on Peacock, and we have Peacock, we've been checking it out. So Keith, let's start overall impressions as the show as a whole, and then we'll get into some of the nitty-gritty.
Well, first off, I'll point out that I was excited that it takes place in Ford Field in Detroit, because that is actually the location to the sequel to my novel. So Dead Circle Part 2, Beneath the Snow. Actually, most of it takes place inside Ford Field in a post-apocalyptic world, running from all sorts of horrible monsters. So if you want to hear all the research that I did on Google Maps about Ford Field in the area, you can go get that on
Amazon. Yeah, check it out.
Get that on Amazon. Somebody just emailed me about this series like 2 days ago, and I'm like, like we're like, oh, I like this part in the book. I'm like, I don't even remember writing it. I have to.
Wrong answer. Wrong answer is yes.
I do not remember.
Worked hard.
Anyway, so that was fun. I thought the show itself, it had some highs, and I don't think there were a lot of particularly low moments in the show, but it was definitely too long.
Mm-hmm.
And it suffered from some like repetition of the same sort of match. None of them were bad, but there was a lot of the sort of the same match over and over again. But I had a really I really enjoyed it. I had a really good time doing it, and I have notes on every single match.
Ooh, I don't know if we're gonna go that deep, but
as well as a numerical rating for every match, buddy.
Yeah, I'm glad you did that. I'm gonna make it up on the fly here. I feel very similarly. It's you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. The issue is that this is the main promotion of all the different wrestling. So there's so many people, so many workers in the company, and they want to give them all their shot, right? They want to give them all some time, but there's just not really time for that. You can't, even a crowd that's as juiced as they were last night, 3.5 hours, going on 4 hours is just a lot to handle. And
it was a full 4 hours.
Yeah, and for some of the other ones where you WrestleMania, they break it up into 2 nights, and I used to not enjoy that, but now I kind of understand why they break it up to get everybody their due.
How long can you scream?
I would say that there were definitely 2 to 3 matches here that really were worth the fun. I would have loved to have just kind of to watched them today, just the good stuff, but there's something about sitting with your pals and kind of going through the pop culture.
I mean, honestly, the joy of it is mainly the text thread with the dummies, which was really fun.
And on my second screen, I had up the Jake Paul or the Logan Paul, the Jake Paul boxing fight, which was a pay-per-view event as well. But I will tell you straight up, internet, I ripped a stream for that because I will not hand that fake boxing my money. Hell no. They don't deserve it. They're not getting it. But if I can find myself a back door, I'm going to take that back door to see the embarrassment of boxing. And guess what? It was just like it was an embarrassment of boxing, but that's not what we're talking about.
Mike takes a lot of back doors, and is surprised why he gets hacked all the time.
But his brother, Logan Paul, is now a bona fide WWE wrestler. He faced Ricochet, who's one of the high flyers. Keith, what do we think of that match?
Well, let me tell you. First off, starting with Kid Rock, no. Kid Rock, no.
I didn't.
We're done with Kid Rock.
Didn't watch Kid Rock.
Move on with Kid Rock. Yep. He's a monster. I thought. I mean, I thought it was okay. It just felt a little bit over choreographed, especially at the beginning. Like it was just like, okay, now we do this move, then we do this, and there's like lots of prep for it. Ricochet is incredibly athletic, and it's super fun to watch him flip around. But it felt a little bit like we were watching their run through as opposed to the actual thing. So I gave it a 6.5.
Okay, so we're going 0 to 10. That's the
0 to 10.
Yeah. So, like Keith said, just for those of you who are not even wrestling, people who are just listening because it's easier to listen than to press the forward button, Keith's mom.
Yes.
Pro wrestling or sports entertainment, as they call it now, is a weird alchemy of entertainment, right? It's really hard, and Keith is trying to dissect what exactly you're appreciating, what is happening. Like somebody who never watches and comes in, my wife often, she'll be like, what is even happening? But the magic of it is after about 10 to 15 minutes, you just kind of get it, right? The storytelling is pretty simple in that you know who the good guy is, the bad guy is mostly. You sort of get what their beef is, and if you don't know, they play a video beforehand. They kind of give you a trailer, and then you watch the thing. And here's the thing, it works or it doesn't work. And there are a gajillion reasons why the alchemy works or it doesn't work. And in this case, it doesn't work because these guys who do it at this level, turns out the majority of them are very good. They're very good at the combination of skills in telling us a story of fake punchy punch, right? And Ricochet is very good doing the high flyer stuff, but he's also got some of the other things that called selling, which kind of makes it all work, right? That works together.
Well, it's the seams. It's filling in the seams in the art form, so you get believability. Like you could have a $10 million Broadway set, But you see it, the first day they put it in the theater, but they haven't done the touch-ups on the paint. They haven't filled in the seams here and there, and all of a sudden, like, oh yeah, that's a set as opposed to a story.
Yeah, and you can see when people are trying too hard. And Logan Paul here is putting in the work, and he's like, he's got the tools, the physical tools. I would never, just because I don't like him as a personality, doesn't mean I would sell him out. So I'm sure. Look at Mike the Miz. We'll talk about him later. He started as just like a reality TV show guy, and he decided, I want to do this, and he's become one of the best. So it can be done. He's just very early, and they're pushing this Logan Paul guy a little bit quickly because he gets
a lot of clicks. Well, and as opposed to AEW, which is I think has a great deal of sort of like philosophical, political integrity, sort of like trying to be a force for good in the world. WWE will work with anyone.
Yeah, totally. So I could see the seams with him, and for me, I just come from I just don't watch the show enough. I don't really I appreciate Ricochet, but I don't find him to have any sort of like je ne sais quoi. And so you were nice giving a 6.5. I'm going to go a 4. I give it a 4.
Yeah, fair. And but next up was a big one, was Cody versus Brock. Which
this is it. This is one of the two main storylines happening in the whole company. You got Cody Rhodes, who I hate his tattoo, but whatever. It is what it is. He's a generational talent. His dad was one of the Hall of Famers.
All-time greats. Yep.
He's facing Brock Lesnar, who is, in my opinion, also a Hall of Fame all-time great.
Oh, no question. Sure.
And this, Keith, in my opinion, did all of the things. Look, we talked about it on our text thread. This guy, Brock Lesnar, is such a monster. He's an Andre the Giant type. It's just not believable when he loses unless it's a great match. And the finisher happens. They sell the turnbuckle how it's going to happen. The MacGuffin is laid very early.
Yeah.
They put out some tables that you knew were going to come into play. They finally came into play. It was a perfectly booked, old school booked type of match. Brock Lesnar puts over the young guy who they needed to do. He needed to further Cody into the great beyond. They put on a great match, huge spots. It was brutal. And then they shook hands and like. Lesnar gave him
which
the
I
pat,
thought elevated a lot.
Never happens anymore, and it happens. Usually, you go out on your back and you just let them have their moment. But this was
it was. I thought
this was adding
a handshake
80s
added
match.
it up a point. And Mom, if you're still listening, what we're talking about the booking, we're talking about the storytelling, right? And so the story of this match and the story of Cody Rhodes is that he is the greatest comeback guy. He's the guy who gets beat up and you think he's out and somehow he musters up the will to come back. And so the whole match was like him just like, setting him up. There's no way he can come back. There's no way he'll get up one more time. There's no way he can beat him. And then he comes back at the end. And that's sort of the smaller story of this particular match, but it is also the larger story that they're telling for Cody Rhodes. The same thing happened because he didn't win at WrestleMania. It's all about his comeback when he takes the title next WrestleMania, and that's the whole story they're telling. And I thought it was really well done. So it gets for me, it gets an 8.5, but a 9 after the handshake because that really added to the moment for me.
Yeah, the more I think about it, I think it was the more important of the two big stories, to be honest, because I think they needed to find a way to get. Because the bloodline, the Samoan storyline has been so great and such a feature, everybody is focused on that and focused on Roman losing the belt eventually to one of his cousins. And I think this was a moment they needed to find a way to get Cody Rhodes back into the picture because we all know where they're headed for WrestleMania, which is not until April. So I think this had more stakes. I think they had
to finish the story.
Yeah.
With Brock.
And they also had to blow the roof off the place early. That's why they put them second, I think. I think Logan Paul they put first because he had to get to Detroit legitimately to see his brother box. Anyway, long story short, I think it was my match of the night, to be honest with you. I'm going to give it also a 9.5.
Yeah, really liked it. Next up was a Battle Royale, which is a really silly concept where they put like 30 wrestlers in the ring and they all sort of like flail at each other until there's only a few left. Really, really silly. What I'd wrote down, almost as huge. We know this. Sheamus versus LA Knight. LA Knight getting the win. The pop for him was giant.
Yeah, he's huge. He's very popular. I don't know much about him. I've seen a couple of his things, and he's cool, and he's got like that kind of Southern thing happening, and he's got a little bit of The Rock and a little bit of Stone Cold Steve Austin. he's over. The people love him. He's got some charisma. Although I will say this, I don't. It's, to be a kind of this kind of a person, like a performer, you need to have ego, right? Ego is what feeds you and pushes you forward. But I would feel so silly if you're putting me in a match with 40 people and I'm the most popular one and it's just all about me. And it's just like, it just seemed such like from the very beginning of this, he got the best entrance, he got he got all the spots were revolved around him. It was just like a lot. He had to do a lot of thank yous in the locker room afterwards because everybody put him over in this. Yeah, it was fine.
For sure.
Battle Royals are stupid. Yeah.
But, I did enjoy it because it was a different format, so I gave it a 7. I think maybe generous, but it was fun. You got a good pop.
I mean, the Royal Rumble coming up, that's like they draw it out for 3 hours. This was in and out in 15 minutes. I'll take it. I'll give it a 6, too. Sounds great.
All right. I think he looks so much like Zachary Levi in Shazam.
He does, but like with the worst hairline.
Yeah, well, we all have bad hairlines.
Yeah, that's
Mike.
true.
Next
Shayna
up,
Baszler versus Ronda Rousey. Yeah.
A fake MMA fight. If they had just wrestled, I think it could have been fine, but they were trying to fake an MMA fight. It was not good.
It was so meta. It was so bad meta that like here are these two huge MMA stars who left for the payday and less strenuous training in WWE, more money. But they like have to prove their bona fides because Shayna's actually a pretty good wrestler. Like professional wrestler. I don't think Ronda is. She hasn't really got the skill set, but she can look badass. Sure. And so here they tried to fake MMA. They did this big knockout kick, which didn't make any sense. And then they did this like the finish. It was bad. It was bad.
It's so silly to do a fake version of the thing you're already doing fake.
It was hokey. It was hokey as hell.
It was not good. Also, the medical professionals who came in the check did some of the worst acting of like.
You get a 2. I'll give it a 2 because they showed up.
I gave it a 4, but that was probably being generous.
All right, we got this guy Gunther who's doing this like authoritative.
Gunther.
Yeah, he's doing this like authoritative, just like authoritarian.
Yeah,
character.
He's like a German fascist.
Yeah, but like they don't want to like make it German, so it's like a pseudo German.
He's Gunther. Let's be honest.
Like, there's no flags. There's no sort of
we're not
iconography.
Directly. He's not officially a Nazi, but he's definitely
like Nazi adjacent.
yes. He's got an ode to Nazi
up against Drew McIntyre, who's not like from the Middle Ages with a giant sword, but is from the Middle Ages with a giant sword adjacent.
They're also Vikings.
I know. It's so silly. Like I can buy the Undertaker as like an undead zombie guy who sometimes rides a motorcycle for some reason, but but these guys, it doesn't. The Drew McIntyre thing, I was like,
so silly.
I was like, oh, you're real bad. You come to you have a 6-foot sword that you instantly
you can't
use, and you put it away, and then you just have tighty whities on. Anyway, these are two bad. They beat the living hell out of each other.
They really did, yeah. Which
was like kind of cool. It was brutal, which is I think what you have to do with these kind of guys. And I thought it told a decent story. I love this Gunther guy. He's a great
he's very compelling because he looks weird. Like everything, his face is weird. His body is weird.
He lost a ton of weight, and so he's got that post I lost a ton of weight body, but he's still brutal. So it's
I think he's very compelling. That
wasn't a shaming, by the way. I was just describing a little bit of his transformation taking place.
I like him. I like the character. I like the presentation. So it was fun, and I sort of like knowing that like we're about to have a chop off, and it's going to be like.
And it's such a random guy for them to have decided to like, not random, he's great, but not your prototypical superstar that gets a championship push. And he's like been Intercontinental champ for a while.
It's also like the whole chop of it all. And for Mom, a chop is like they hit each other in the chest.
They slap each other in the chest. Yeah.
And it's such a great, and grunt. There's a lot of grunting. It's
grunt heavy. It's grunt heavy.
But it's a nice adaptation that they've done that you can have sort of the simulation of brutality without like the risk of injury. Like it used to be like, oh, let's hit each other in the head with chairs and get concussions and like have like actual brutality that is like actually pretty grim and upsetting when you think about it because of the real danger. This, you're able to like, you can see like the welts or whatever, but nobody's in any danger, right? So it's brutal, but also not dangerous. And I think that's a really good adaptation that they're doing there.
Yeah, that's been around since time immemorial, but yeah, I agree. It's like you'll see from that first match, a lot of the high flying and the jumping around spots sort of lose their luster after a while. I like the more brutal stuff. I want my He-Man to fight. Okay, so
Seth Rollins.
Oh, what'd you give Gunter there? I'll say a 7.
Oh, Gunter. I give him a 7.5 for the chop off. Rollins versus Baylor.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's a championship match. I like Seth Rollins, always have, in his many different incarnations. Finn Balor, I've never liked. I have never liked his angles. I appreciate him, but I just don't sort of get it. He doesn't do it for me. So it was a hard meh for me. It was a good match. They went at it.
Yeah, I mean,
this sport starts to get a little samey, like you said.
Right. We had a lot of like one guy and one guy fighting each other at this point. I was like ready to move on to something else. Bit of a slow start. Then I wrote down they needed a palate cleanser between these two matches.
Mm-hmm.
Needed something like a comedy match or something weird, some sort of a format change, because like I started to lose interest, even though these are both great wrestlers.
Mm-hmm.
And started slow, got better. They had some accidental juice. They had the Money in the Bank run and slot. So I felt like the storytelling here was sloppy. I didn't know what story they were trying to tell.
I don't think they do either. I think they're trying to they're testing out to see what's kind of like in this mid-card area, like what is, it's not even really mid-card, it's the championship. I mean, but when you've got so many championships, it's hard to keep. Yeah, it was okay. It was all right.
I gave it a 6.5.
Yeah, I'm with you. That sounds good. And then we had the women's championship. Bianca Belair, it's a triple threat. Charlotte Flair, Asuka. That, which probably should have, I get what they're doing, trying to make it, but they probably could have put this between the two matches.
I think that would have helped had they moved that. Just
this was
those two matches.
Definitely a better match, I thought, because
much better.
All three of them are incredible workers. The only thing I didn't like was the finish. I thought was a little. I'm just over the false spots. So many they have these huge moves they do, and then we kick out. There's so many kickouts, which I get it is a part of the thing and it's exciting. But there was this setup for this incredible finish, and they just had a kick out, which
so good.
Sucked.
Yeah, it would have been so much better. Yeah. So what they had is Bianca had a what looked to be a legit injury. They faked this one as legit way better than the other one. I bought it. I thought she was actually injured. Well, it turns out it was a work. And she comes back and she does this incredible spot to finish the match, and somehow it doesn't. She ends up winning anyway.
Yeah, just
so
not there.
Why the hell wouldn't it, I think it was like they decided, like, I think Charlotte was like, I need to finish stronger, so we need to have one more thing. I think that was just bad trying to like.
But then they did have a run in by this
there.
person I've never seen before who had won Money in the Bank and becomes the new champion. And I don't know why, Keith, but I always like when this happens. It's the only reason. It's the only reason to do Money in the Bank. That person has to get a cheap shot at the championship. It's the only thing that makes that story compelling. Unlike the previous match with Judas Priest, who's got the thing and he's doing it.
He didn't even do it.
It didn't make any sense.
But yeah, so cashing in here for Io Sky, that made sense logically for the story. You have an injured star who just won. We've just watched her go through all of this stuff. It made logical sense, and I think Io Sky is on paper a heel, but she gets a babyface reaction, so I think they're probably going to turn her pretty soon.
Yeah,
I like the whole, like, it started a little slow for me, but it eventually got there. I liked the whole shenanigans of it. I gave it an 8,
and it's great because now you have 3 people who were in the triple threat who can now vie to get back to the title. You can give somebody time off if they need it, whatever. You open a lot of doors for yourself.
Yeah, it was fun. They all did a really good job.
Yeah, and I love the spray, the old school, like.
Oh yeah, so old school.
All right, so then we get up to it. So then we had a great video package. We get to Roman Reigns, Jey Uso, and Keith. All I have to say is when we started the text thread, I word for word dictated how this was going to play out, because it was the only the pieces were set. We know where they're going.
Yep.
We know that the in order for them to get to a Cody Rhodes, Roman Reigns main event at WrestleMania, we have to bump Cody up, and we have to somehow offset Jey Uso, who was coming in with a huge amount of fan support. He had just pinned Roman. Everybody wants Roman. Everybody hates Roman to the point they want to get the belt off him. Everybody's thinking, this is the night. This is the night. There's no way this can be the night.
No way. There's no way they can.
So how are we going to make it compelling? How are we going to create drama? So what do? They have a great match, right?
Terrific
Great match. Mostly Roman laying waste to Jay, actually.
He's a good bump taker.
And I think that was sort of like a subtle nod because in the beginning of Roman's kind of ascent, they did a lot of squashes with him and people were getting sick of it. And I think they were setting this up as a type of squash or making you think that. And then Jay gets the upper hand. He hits a couple spots. He goes up high. There's kickouts, lots of drama. Now you're thinking, oh my God, maybe they're going to put it on him and we're going to figure this out in the coming months.
Yeah.
1, Keith. 2, Keith. Somebody pulls him out who's dressed in he just has a sweatshirt hood.
He's the Unabomber. Yeah, the Unabomber pulls him out.
And it is his brother, Jimmy, who we thought was injured. But it turns out he's come back to the family and now...
Oh, what a betrayal.
I mean, Jey Uso was giving you tears. He was crying. Heyman was crying. Everybody was crying. I was trying to stay awake. And then, so it was a great go-home. They did exactly what it was. So now that whole feud is going to go to, I think, probably Jay and Jimmy is what we're leading up to at WrestleMania, would be my guess.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Jay and Jimmy, and then Roman and Cody.
Yeah.
Which and I got to say, like, every time I think, like, oh, I'm so tired of this story. And to be fair, I only watch the pay-per-views.
Yeah, me too.
So, like, I haven't watched any of the weekly, and I was texting my friend Jason, who was like, I'm so sick of them because he watches the TV. So, like, I totally get it.
Mm-hmm.
But every time I'm, like, impressed with the storytelling they're able to do here with this whole, like, I described it to Jillian as, like, it's like a full-on episode of Dallas where they're, like, slapping each other. But... Yes. I think
somebody comes back from the dead, and then they have amnesia, and then
100%, and then like the brother versus brother, blah 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 blah. I think their storytelling, their acting, is so good. Like Jimmy's acting is phenomenal, and I think that it makes such a big deal, such a big difference. I also think that I was texting to you guys. They take and give punches and kicks better than anybody else in the business.
Well, who are you going to trust the most, right? You're going to, I don't care how much you've worked with people, your family, who you've been training with since you were a literal child. Yeah. You're going to lay in with them because you know exactly where the limits are.
And they, they take a kick, they take a punch. They look like they have died in the air.
Super kicks, flying super kicks, the Jimmy's or Jay's splash off the top. I mean, it is full.
And they sell like they are dead on their feet, and you buy it. Mm-hmm. It's so like then you watch Jake Paul, and you're like, oh wow, that's what normal people would do. These guys are amazing at that. So yeah, I had a blast. Mm-hmm. I had a blast with this. I think it's really fun because I'm only getting it once a month. I'm not bored with these people and these performances.
Well, it used to be you'd only get it on Saturday nights. Like, that's wrestling back in the day. You were lucky if you saw a live show. You were lucky if you caught it on TV on Saturday night main event. It just wasn't as there wasn't as much. So I don't envy the writers and the people trying to like keep pumping content out. And you also have to come up with some stuff for social media and for this. It's a difficult task. But
and also, like, Heyman is so much fun. I mean, come on.
He's one of the best of all time, if not the best of all time. I think my overall... So anyway, I'll give that match... I'm going to give it just under the Brock-Cody match because I felt it to be very... I knew exactly what they had to do, and they did it. Sometimes that's harder when you people know about what you're about to do and you have to still make it compelling. But just under. So that was a 9.5. I'm going to give this a 9.
Yeah, I'm going to flip it. I gave Brock the 9. I'm going to give this the 9.5 because even though you knew it was going to happen, I thought the intricacies of the storytelling, like setting up Chekhov's table and either spots, you can see them coming, but they teased so well. The backdrop off of the rope onto the table, like we knew it was coming. We saw the setup for like 3 minutes, and it was still fantastic. And
for me, the big takeaway for me, from a really bird's eye perspective is the difference between Triple H at the helm and McMahon at the helm. When McMahon was kind of running the show creatively, there was excitement because he would change shit at the last second.
We would have moved on from this story 2 years ago.
He changed stuff at the last second. He tries a bunch of different stuff, crazy stuff. It was always kind of drama. He would zig when the audience wanted him to zag just to be a bastard. Whereas Triple H, maybe some of it seems a little plotted, but I feel more sure hands. Like there's a story written out a few months and they are just doing it. And I just feel a little bit more like it is a polished product.
It has patience. And I think two thoughts. One, this storyline has created two main event baby faces that nobody would have expected. Like, Jey Uso and Sami Zayn. Like 2 years ago, neither one of they were like mid-card at best. They are both now main eventers on big pay-per-views that they sort of created. They need to start creating the heel.
Yeah.
Right? Because once Roman goes down, they've got sort of nobody to be the number one heel. And they need to start building something non-related to the bloodline.
Yeah.
Some
Brock
sort of a monster heel.
I think
no, Brock can't do it forever. I think Brock and Cody, that storyline's done.
But that's not going to happen.
Like almost? Okay, he can't wrestle.
Gunther has I think we could see if they could push him up the charts. We'll see.
But he's sort of in a great spot where he is.
They have a lot of faces coming up.
Too many faces, not enough heels. But the last thought about it is that I think, when we reviewed WrestleMania, we were both like, I can't believe they didn't give it to Cody. Like, that's stupid. It was a mistake. They really should have done it. You know what? Triple H, you sold me, right? After seeing this, I'm like, you're right. That was the right call. There was more to be mined out of this, and I didn't realize it.
Even if they didn't know at the time, right?
Yeah,
where they were going to go. I think they knew there was some more juice there.
It was the right call. You have another year out of the bloodline before you hand it to Cody, and I think that was the right call. I take it back. I retract my annoyance about that.
We have a great little group of friends who watch this stuff together. So it was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to the next one. I think I don't know, but definitely Mania is going to be cool. That's a little bit ways away. All right.
Well, we've got 6 months.
Quickly, Keith, I wanted to talk about, I watched a movie on Netflix, a documentary on Netflix that I had heard about. I knew nothing more than I had heard it was really good. You have to check it out. It's called The Deepest Breath. It is written by and directed by Laura McGann. And cinematography, which I want to shout out, is Tim Cragg. And it was edited by Julian Hart. Music by Nainta Desai. Apologies if I butchered that. So it came out in January. It was a darling at the Sundance film festival. And it's finally on Netflix. And I got a chance to check it out. And it is ostensibly a profile about the sport of freediving, and one of the best there is, Alessia Zacchini, and the Italian, and this is following her on her quest to break a world record, and her relationship and help from her safety diver, a very famous safety diver, Stephen Keenan. So, a couple of things, and I want to be very mindful here. The movie, pretty smartly, I guess, assumes no one watching this really knows anything about these people or this subject. So you get a good primer into what freediving is, which is basically go down as deep as you can in one breath. You have no scuba gear, you have no snorkel gear, and you need safety people because, you get the bends coming up, which is when the pressure affects you, you stop breathing, all the kinds of things. And almost nobody comes up, and then when you come up, depending on how much mouth to mouth you need, basically, you get a red card or a white card, and that's the judges saying, okay, like you did it unassisted or you were assisted, in which case you don't get the record. Now, this, much like a lot of other...
So basically, depending on how much you die...
Yeah. Now, that's not to take away how much incredible swimmers they have to be, how much training, how much the breath hold. There's so much actual athletic prowess involved in all of this, but it is not just a go down and come up kind of thing. There's a lot of safety apparatus needs to take place, and that can only be, when you think about it, there's only so much these people can go down because the safety people have to be free divers also. They can't really go down in scuba gear because if they have to help you, all that gear is not going to be helpful. And so it's a really specialized thing. And so it's not just about this lady trying to break the record, but also this guy, Steven, who sort of develops how the whole safety diving team and protocol should be run. He sort of revitalizes and revamps how safety is done in these events. And what's cool is because it's happening in the advent of sort of extreme sports and the technology now, they have incredible footage of all of this stuff. All of the events, all of the training. They do GoPro stuff in their personal vlogs, so it's just all filmed.
Well, that's how they fund all of this.
Yeah, almost none of it is hearsay. It's all firsthand account taking place on this. Now, it is shot beautifully. The relationship between Alessia and Steven, I believe, became romantic. They don't focus on that. It's much more about their sort of mutual love for the sport and how they get together. So that's really, that's very compelling. The runtime is short enough that I think you can, it's a beautiful watch. It reminds me in many ways of the reverse of Free Solo, which is a guy climbing a mountain with no ropes, and this is people going down.
Yeah. That was my first thought too. Yeah.
And it's very much just as beautiful. And I preferred that documentary, but this is very good. The reason I have some feelings about it, definitely I recommend. Let me start there. I definitely recommend it. My thing is this, though. The way the entire sort of what to me appears to be the sort of framing device of the movie is that we don't hear anything from Steven or Alessia in the first 80% of the film, 90% of the film. Everything is accounts from other people using the past tense. And so right away you're like, oh, they dead?
Are they dead? Right.
Are they both dead? Are one of them dead? Is somebody dead? Is nobody dead? And it became clear to me as we went on that regardless of the answer of this, I'm feeling manipulated. I'm feeling a little bit like that is a forced drama, which it doesn't need it. They are holding their breath and going down hundreds of meters, and then they're going to come back up. And then they're doing these crazy things. You don't need any, whether they live or die, like, I'm worried about them anyway, right? So it felt a little like, I didn't, of course.
Manipulative. I think that's the right word.
Spoiler alert. There's not a super happy ending for everyone. I'll say that.
Interesting.
Which almost stands to reason. The way I'd be almost let down if it's just like a happy, like,
it ends
with a wedding. Well, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they're leading. There's this sense of foreboding that if it has to go somewhere. But if it does go somewhere, does that not make the film sort of? Are these people not? Like, what's the difference between celebrating someone's work and life and accomplishments versus?
Right? Is it ghoulish?
Yeah, it doesn't feel ghoulish, but I will say it. The questions are asked, right? I'm left asking those questions here. So I would love to hear what you think about that. If you take a peek, let us know. That doesn't take away from they do their best to be celebratory and to draw focus onto this really interesting thing people do for some reason. God bless them. God bless them.
Craziness.
Anyway, so that's The Deepest Breath. I did really enjoy it, and Jen watched the whole thing and didn't fall asleep, which is like saying something.
That's like a 2 thumbs up right there.
All right, Keith, so that just leaves us with our Weekly Rad. What do you got for your Weekly Rad?
Well, it's not particularly different than it's been for a while, but I've just been really enjoying being in a place of creativity.
Yeah,
and
Keith's in the flow state.
I'm in the flow state. I'm writing stuff. I'm coming up with nonsense. People are pitching me ideas, and I'm stealing them and putting them into implement. You pitched me an idea yesterday. It's already done and recorded and notated. It's already in there.
Excellent.
And it's been really, really fun to be writing as actively as I am, and to be sort of like in that creative flow state. And I can't really talk about what I'm doing yet, but Mike and Jen have already contributed to a demo already features them.
We had a blast. We had a freaking blast doing it.
It's so silly, and so I am appreciative, and I'm grateful for all the people in my life who are helping me with this nonsense that I'm creating. Jillian's been a huge help.
Oh, I'm sure
you guys have been a huge help, and we've been just putting out nonsense in the basement. I'm waiting
for that first table read, baby. Those are my favorites.
Yeah, well, good. It's coming. I mean, I promise not to write anything other than the opening number until I get the green light from the producers. Well, I'm 6 songs in and about 40 pages in the script, and I haven't gotten it, so I can't help myself.
I knew that was going to happen too. The second he said that, I was like, yeah, okay, cool. He was like, I've already written 4 songs. I was like, yeah, okay, it's just that first one, right? No, that's awesome. We're really proud for you. Flow State, Keith, is what we're calling it. This is something completely different I'm going to throw your way, but I have always been a huge fan of listening to the radio. I love radio. And we can all think back to like growing up and like what our radio station was, right? Depending on where you lived in the country or whatnot. And what's been cool is that now with the proliferation of, well, yes, sadly, satellite radio is amazing, but you are moving away from the DJ experience, the curated music experience of some stations, some great NPR stations, some great local stations, different things.
That's just an algorithm now. Yeah.
But some of those great stations that are rocking and rolling and continually to be funded are continually to be funded because they are good and because people listen to them. And because of the internet, now people can listen to them all over. My friend turned me on to a radio station called The Current, which is based out of Minneapolis, St. Paul. It's 89.3 there. But starting in 2005, they have gone national. So you can find them online. You can find them. You can ask Siri to play it for you. Just say, "Hey Siri, play The Current," and it gives you their live feed. It's not even a separate feed, which some stations do. It's the live feed, and they play an incredible mix of music, for all the way from just like current pop to 70s, 80s, 90s rock to hip hop. It is incredibly eclectic, to soul. I mean, everything. They have a locals show where they play a lot, just like local Minnesota music, or local to where they're Duluth music. Just really incredible. I love the DJs. I love the mix. They do an album of the month where they feature songs from that throughout the month. And I've really been listening for about 3 months now. I've enjoyed every one of those albums. It's expanded my musical tastes a little bit. It does all of the great stuff, and to the point where I'm on the fence about I might actually support them. You know, I used to support WFUV out of New York. They've gotten a little stale and a little like their rotation is very tight right now, and so you're hearing the same things all the time. Whereas The Current is feeling much more eclectic. I'm loving The Current. Check it out. You can also check out their website at thecurrent.org. Great music lives here, Keith, and great music, wherever you can find it, you should check it out. I'll talk next week about this. Maybe I won't. In fact, I'm not even going to tease it because I've decided just in the moment I'm not going to talk about it. Because if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it.
Oh, that's so mysterious, yes.
No, I went and saw a band recently that wasn't great. But that's not what the Weekly Rad is about. The Weekly Rad is about rad stuff.
No.
Okay, so that said, Keith, whatever cave you're listening to whatever you're watching, don't let anyone yuck your yum. Keep on doing those things. You find fun, get creative, and keep on geeking on.
Barbie made $1 billion.